If you guys haven't heard, the governments of the world in their infinite wisdom are planning to ban the sale of new internal combustion engines by in and around 2035, I think it is. Is that the year?
Yeah, 2030 or 2035, yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
2030 in California.
Yeah.
Get the map that shows the countries that are trying to ban internal combustion engines by 2035, and you'll see it's such a small portion of the globe.
But what you're forgetting, Dragus, is that these mind viruses start somewhere, and then they infect.
I have the origin.
I mean, look at it. 20 years ago.
I have the origin. Here it is, right here. This is where it starts. These bratty purple-haired nerds. Check this out.
I hope you don't find net worth online. It's quite easy to find.
It's not actually true. It's easy to find, but it's not actually true.
In the hundreds of millions.
But that's not.
It costs around £20,000 to insulate a British home. So that's 8,000 British homes for your 150 net million, which is what it says online.
Which is untrue. But
do you really think that you're worth more than 8,000 cold, freezing families?
Have you seen the studies on insulation? That insulation.
Do you care about the people living in fuel poverty?
Very much so. When I was Secretary of State for Energy, I was responsible for developing the plan that has brought energy prices down for families. That was policy that I was intimately involved in designing, so of course I care about that.
So you do understand the report that you're asking me about says that the cost of insulating British homes is so expensive because of the government's failure to insulate British homes.
But what happens 3 years after people have insulated their homes? They use the same amount of energy as they did before. There's been a study on this, which I'm sure you've seen reports on. In the first year, they save money. In the second year, they save a small amount of money. In the third year, they have actually made themselves warmer because the economics of it is they have a certain amount they can spend on energy.
What happens when the government fails to insulate British homes? 7.5 million British people live in fuel poverty. Parents are starving themselves.
She's not listening. Well, I don't know. Let's just go with they, them are not listening to a word that this dude is saying.
They can feed their children, and people are freezing to death in their homes because they are forced to choose between heating and eating. People are dying. Are you hearing me?
Because it's simply not true.
Aren't they always just experts at spending other people's money? Oh, I looked up your net worth online. So if we take your net worth and then distribute it amongst 20,000 pound insulation rates on the poor and the impoverished in the UK, then their houses will be warm this winter, right? Like, let's just steal your money, distribute it amongst these people. And then what he's saying is basically, yeah, fine. So they'll be warmer for the first year or so. But then after that, in 3 years' time, they'll be in the same spot, which is factually true. People that are irresponsible, that don't take ownership for their lives, you give somebody $1 million that just wins the lottery, they're poor within 2 years usually, right? They've gone and blown it all. Anyway, so this is where this mind virus starts, right? Like this notion that, internal combustion engines are bad or they're wrong. Now, they've studied this. I want to say this, because they've studied this. There's lots of videos out there breaking it down from a factual, scientific perspective that battery-powered vehicles are not net positive for the environment until they hit like 80,000 miles. Before that, they actually do worse damage to the environment prior to that. And in reality, if you've got yourself set up correctly with, which you will, let's say by 2035, I bet you they'll find ways to improve the efficiency of the internal combustion engine even further so that it produces less. Sorry, 50, I got to mute you because you got birds singing in the background. I'll let you chime in a second. But like they actually have, tell the birds to shut up. They actually have a fuel production facility in Chile. Porsche just bought this business. There's a fuel production facility in Chile that extracts carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, mixes it with some other chemicals, and gives you petroleum, gasoline, refined gas that you can burn in your car like any other gas you pull out of a pump. Right now, the cost of extraction is about 40 bucks a gallon, but they can definitely get that cost down. So it's completely carbon neutral. The notion that battery powered cars, where you have these children in cobalt mines in the Congo, poisoning themselves, getting this chemical under their skin, under their nails, in their eyes and all this, like these kids are dying to make a couple cents a day so that people can feel virtuous about charging their Teslas, right?
Well, what they don't realize is that every time they come up with a legislation, companies always find a way around it. You're familiar with the CAFE standards here in the United States?
Yeah.
It's carbon something. It's called fleet equivalent. So you have a fleet equivalent. Like Chevy's entire fleet has to come in at X miles per gallon. So you know what Chevy do? Because they make most of their money on trucks, and so do Ford. Have you ever seen those things that are like a loaf of bread on wheels, the Chevy Aveo?
Yeah.
It's like you could kick it over if you lost your temper badly enough. Do you know why Chevy makes that? Because when you
lower their EPA,
yes,
to lower foreign markets.
Yes, no. It is they make that because when you put its mile, it's called fleet equivalent. Yeah. When you average it out, so if you put something in to your big gas guzzling V8s and all that, and you got to measure it across the 23 cars that you make, when you put the Aveo in and it gets 34 miles to the gallon, it takes the average down below. So, and these, as I said to Rich during the week, we didn't get the internet by banning phone lines. We didn't get the airplane by banning ocean liners. So these morons think that, by banning cars, and generally these are people that all work in office blocks in high density cities, policymakers, and they generally aren't out in the real world. And they think that everybody has husband, wife, two and a half kids, and they can all drive a 4-door sedan and commute 15 minutes to work. What they don't realize is that, the people that provide their food and their furniture and build their houses need things a little bigger and a little more powerful and a little more convenient and cheaper.
You know what these people are best described as? People that never play to win. They play only not to lose.
Yeah, well, they don't even know what they're playing if we're being honest. It's just about feels. It's like, well, I feel like if I just drive an electric car, I'll save the environment and fuck capitalism and let's dismantle the patriarchy and blah. Like, they don't have any logical reasoning that looks at scientific data. It's just, I feel like gas cars are bad. It's like, okay,
just like the lady that was arguing with Ma Grease in the video you showed. I mean, we all know what her parents' house looks like. It probably looks very big, and she comes from an affluent background, but she's like, you don't care about poor people in Britain. It's always like, okay, there's a difference between caring and doing. You can care about everybody, but are you going to do anything? Dye your hair blue and dress like, a pixie and yell at somebody.
I always say something like that too. Like, how many poor people live with you? How many people have you brought in off the street? When you walk by a homeless person, do you stop and help them out? No, you do like all of us do. You're like, oh, stay away from that guy. He's a weirdo, and you just go about your life.
Yeah. I think it actually relates to the video that Rich had played earlier, in that it corresponds with personal responsibility, though. So, like 20 or 30 years ago, like, you had your personal responsibility. You'd say, there's certain things that I can do, certain things that I can't do. Okay, so now you have these politicians that say, "Oh, the environment is warming," which it is. It isn't. That's not the point. They say, give me your vote, and I can stop the environment from warming. I can stop this virus. I can stop your children from doing X, Y, Z. Though, right? When they really don't even have the power to do that. But again, it's offloading the responsibility from yourself to the government, right? Do you know what I mean?
Government. A millionaire, a billionaire, whatever it happens to be, it just doesn't add up, man. Like, every time, you see these purple-haired weirdos talking about their virtuous ways of saving the planet, it's like most of the stuff they talk about you don't need to get involved in. That there's nothing to save. The climate has been changing for millions of years. Climate change is not new. Climate has been changing for millions of years, and it will continue to change. We're not having that much of an impact on it.
Yeah,
and I have a relative. I have a relative that constantly posts stuff about saving the bees. Save the bees, save the bees. They live in a large city, save the bees, and most of their efforts to save the bees generally involves legislation and giving more power to the government. I generally ignored it, but a few weeks ago, I counted on my property. I have 57 lavender plants, and lavender plants they're like crack cocaine to bees.
Yeah.
So I counted them, and I said, I've planted 57 lavender plants on my property. What are you doing? Posting on Facebook? What did the bees see your Facebook post? Because they're out there doing lines of lavender in my plants every morning.
Yeah, no.
If there is such a thing.
Why are like these types of chicks so overweight? Because that requires energy. Like, really, if you wanted to save the planet, you'd walk everywhere.
Oh, but they're all vegan, Jared.
Yeah, right.
They're all vegan.
Dude,
they're saving the planet,
which
by
is
not
insane.
Eating meat.
Yeah, like
Jared,
energy or nutrition dense food. Okay,
dude, you just hit on something great. You could say obesity is bad for the environment because you calculate how many kilocalories, kilojoules, whatever they have to consume every day. So a fit person is leaner and is more efficient. So you take in 2,000 calories a day, Jaron, you're going to be a lot more efficient. So these overweight, obese people are generally like V8, 12 mile per gallon engines. So they need to be
an energy equation.
Let's just let's ban them. Let's start banning them. No,
you know what?
That'd be so funny.
I'm gonna go full on hardcore with you on this one, because I always see this stuff, this argument from they call them bigger people, on planes, because they don't fit in the seats, and they're always lobbying to have bigger seats and reasonable seat space, and they're always the same. They're always like 3 or 4 pound Hufflepuffs, and I get the argument. Like, coach seats in the back suck. I mean, if I have a long flight, I always sit in the front. Like, I'm not sitting in those little fucking shit seats. But they like to charge, like, airlines want to charge you extra money for your extra baggage, but they never charge fat people extra money. Why aren't they putting people on a scale when they go and check in and get their tickets? And if you weigh more than the average person, your height and weight, or your height and age, let's say, charging them more money for the extra fuel they have to put on the plane to haul their fat ass around, right? I got to pay extra money for a 50-pound bag. Why aren't they paying extra money for the extra 50 pounds that they're carrying around? Some of them are carrying around 100, 200 extra pounds, right? You see what I'm saying here?
You know what? They could make even more money by charging people to sit and watch the fat people being weighed on the scale like cattle.
That will
charge
never
them by
happen.
pound.
I would sit there with my popcorn and just watch. Like, wow, look at this one. What do you think this one weighs?
I'm gonna, guys.
They need to.
We're going to get banned here. I'm going to have to set up like a Rumble stream so that we only stream. We're going to run into problems at some point, offering some of these.
But Rich, with Disneyland in California, Disneyland, Disney World, they actually did have a thing saying if you're too overweight, you can't ride this ride because you're gonna break the ride. And then people were mad. People were complaining about Disneyland. They're like, well, what do we do? These fat people, these fatstos keep breaking our ride. Right? So what are we gonna do? We keep paying.
Blame it on the environment. Hey, it's because of global warming, guys. Like, there's nothing we can do about it.
Yeah. I really hope you guys enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full-length podcast, you can find that over here. That clip's from. If you're newer to the channel, make sure you hit subscribe over here, and pin down below in the top comment, you'll find a bunch of useful links to my website, my supplement line, books, and a bunch of other stuff. Have an amazing day. Peace out.